It's time for another podcast by George. Straight talk, straight from the heartland, that'll have you saying, "By George, I think he's got it." Now, here's George.
Hello, hi, how are you? Welcome back to another podcast by George. We're here in the Heartland, riding out climate crisis. You heard Dr. Jerry Schnur from the University of Iowa, and we were talking derecho an episode or two ago. And that's an ongoing issue here in the state of Iowa. I mean, there's so much news, and a lot of it climate-related, a lot of it weather-related. I mean, you got the wildfires in California, you got Laura down there in the Gulf, and of course, derecho is still impacting and is going to be impacting the state of Iowa for some time to come. I'll just kind of background this for folks that may not be aware of what happened, but, almost 2 weeks ago, we had some forecasts of storms coming through. We get them all the time. I got a thunderstorm warning on my weather radio. Okay, big deal, thunderstorm coming through. I look out the front window. Holy buckets, what the hell is this? I've never seen anything like this before. A couple of wind gusts. Unbelievable. Eastern Iowa got winds in excess of 140 miles an hour, they're saying now. And I'm going to throw a graphic up on the screen to show you the track of this thing. We're talking, look at it. I mean, it's 50 miles wide. It starts in Nebraska, comes across the state of Iowa, goes clear across Illinois. It's like a hurricane in the heartland. I mean, that might be the best way to describe it because it was of a Cat 2, Cat 3, somewhere in there, Category 3 hurricane, 140 mile an hour winds. Well, as is the case, I mean, I was without power here in the central Iowa, Des Moines area for about 4 days. It was a hardship. I got back on the air with the podcast, and people kind of forgot about it. I mean, the news hub in Iowa, everything really, the hub is Des Moines, obviously, but eastern Iowa is still struggling, and I mean, they were waylaid by derecho. Unbelievable, and there really hasn't been enough news coverage on it. So I wanted to revisit it because people, as we speak, as I'm doing this podcast, are still trying to get things back in eastern Iowa. And joining us on the Podcast by George live line is Rachel Seals. She's with the Iowa Derecho Storm Resource page. You can see that on Facebook. She's also the admin of a website that we'll talk about where you can follow this thing. But Rachel, welcome to a Podcast by George.
Hello, hi.
Well, thanks for coming on, and I'm sure you'd be the first to say that this thing is not over, and it's kind of like, where's everybody, the news media, been over the past week or so? Because, I mean, there hasn't been a lot of coverage over this, and unless you've been without power, folks, and in this day and age, without cell service, and, of course, in some areas, rural Iowa, if you don't have power, that means you're without water. And where I live, we were without water, electricity, and sewage service for almost a week, because it was powered by electricity. My God, I mean, we're talking Stone Age. We're talking third world country here. And that's what it's been like in parts of Cedar Rapids for going on 2 weeks. Rachel, bring us up to date.
So, yeah, we definitely have a whole lot of stuff still going on. We've got at least 200 people still without power. Most of the city, most of the metro area is still without internet. I got lucky. We were having some connection issues before because my internet is not the greatest. Because upstream, even if you have internet, it's still cutting out quite a lot because of the damage that was done. Alliant has almost finished rebuilding the entire infrastructure for the city of Cedar Rapids, Marion, Hiawatha, and now finally, now that Alliant is done, Mediacom is now finally able to go through, and they have to replace hundreds of miles of cable internet lines as well.
A lot of people were critical of these utilities and for their work and how they chose to go where and what they did. My personal experience, but it was nothing like what you're going through out there. But they could do a better job of letting people know what they're up to. Because, I mean, if you're without power, I mean, if you've got a phone that works or if you can get access to Wi-Fi or something, you got nothing to do other than wonder when things are going to get back to normal. So I would criticize them for not having a better means of showing people what they've done, what they're doing, and what they're going to do. How did their response measure up as far as you're concerned out there in eastern Iowa?
Depends on which person you ask. I
Yeah.
know we didn't get any help from National Guard or any very many other state or federal um, state or federal groups, state or federal groups, um, in regards to this, because the mayor, to my understanding, did not realize exactly what those groups were for. He said in a statement to one of the news stations that how am I supposed to enact the National Guard? What can they do? What can they do to help us? Can they do all this stuff that we need? And it just seemed really disappointing that a government official that is in charge of such a large city didn't understand the resources that were available to them. And that's actually where we came in over here at the resource page is I'm actually not the starter of the page. I'm just moderating it for them. Raymond Siddell just created it as a group for him and his family and his friends to get together and help each other out, and it just blew up, which is where we're getting a lot of our help from. So Facebook communities, this community here in Cedar Rapids, Marion, and Hiawatha, and all of our outlying cities, they've all been grouping together and coming together and helping each other get themselves back up on their feet.
Yeah, and I wanted to talk to you about that. You know, I'm a lot older than you, obviously, and I mean, my most probably best reference point for this is 1993, the Great Flood that came through and knocked Des Moines off. I actually was upstream in the northern part of the state. I had a rain gauge. I went out and looked at it, and it was spilling over. I don't know. I think it went to 7 inches or something like that, and it was overflowing one morning. I went out there and looked at it and went, oh, my God, that's the Des Moines River Basin. Look out, Des Moines, baby. It's coming your way. And, of course, it did. And again, they went back to the Stone Age when they lost power and water and everything for a couple of weeks. You know, and what happened then, to get to your point, the National Guard was mobilized. I mean, they called out everybody but the infantry. Huge trucks came through to provide people with drinking water. The National Guard has generating ability for electricity. I mean, they can power small encampments or villages. I mean, they can't power a city, but they've got huge generators on flatbeds and trucks and stuff like that that can get there eventually. I don't know if they bring them in by rail or by truck, but, you know, those kind of things can and do happen. But it sounds like that assistance was pretty slow getting to Cedar Rapids.
Yes, it was very slow getting to us. It wasn't until about day 4 that the mayor contacted Governor Reynolds and asked her for assistance. And it wasn't until about 3 days after that before they finally got President Trump involved. And they eventually did declare us and several counties around us a national disaster area. So it took a little while before we got the help, but now we do have Army National Guard, we've got Red Cross, we've got we've got Salvation Army. A lot of big nonprofits are in town and helping us out, and it's awesome.
Kind of describe for us the effort thus far by the volunteers, by people like yourself that have been helping out, and then tell us what still needs to be done, how people that want to help, what they can do.
On my page on the Iowa Derecho Storm Resource page, we have actually been helping coordinate volunteers to places that were really heavy hit. We've got some apartment buildings missing roofs. We've got apartment buildings missing entire levels. So all those families have been put out on the streets. We've been, so our volunteers with the page will occasionally go out and help clean up debris, and we'll be delivering supplies to people who are unable to make the drive up to our donation center. And And also in our donation center, we have a bunch of supplies, non-perishable food, ice, water, anything you can think of. We probably have it at our the donation center that was eventually set up by Raymond Siddell. And pretty much anybody can come out if they need something. We've got tarps, flashlights, food, like I said, water. We sometimes do have hot meals cooked on site for people who don't have power still or don't have the ability to get a decent meal. And right now we're at a point where a lot of what we need to do is help those families that don't have homes anymore and help the families whose homes have been deemed as unlivable. And we need shelters, really, for these people. And we also need we're still also very much in the state where we need some more debris cleanup. In addition to that, we also have a lot of lines that our cable companies need to replace as well.
So that work is still underway, and it's going to be some time before everything is fully restored and has some semblance of normalcy. And of course, the corn crop in particular, the ramifications of that are just becoming felt. And you combine with that again another climate crisis catastrophe, the drought, which is really bad here in central Iowa and in the western part of the state. My God, when you combine all of these factors, and then remember, folks, we're in a pandemic on top of all of that. And of course, we're just one part of this horrific play that's playing itself out across the country with the wildfires in California, the hurricane down in the Gulf, and the derecho recovery. And now most people have gotten power back, it sounds like, but people can be kind of cavalier about how this affects, well, it's just a few thousand people, it's just a few, well, okay, unless it's you. I always want to bring that up to people. I mean, if it's your life, if it's your home, if it's your family, if you haven't had any electricity for a couple of weeks, holy buckets, that's a major issue. Well, Rachel, before we let you go, I'll give you the final word. Anything you want to close with here as we wrap up this particular podcast by George?
I can't think of anything major. I think we've covered most of the points that I was expecting to cover. Definitely come on out and help us if you're interested. We have financial donations coming in as well. You can check out the page on Facebook, and all of the financial donation information is there. If you want to send supplies, you can send it on over as well. You can just ship them straight to us if you want to use Amazon Prime or whatever. And that address is located on the Facebook page as well. I'll just give it out here real quick. It's 4001 First Avenue Southeast in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And we are happy to help make sure that any goods and money donated will go right into the community.
I will do that. Now, of course, we're on Facebook with a podcast. I'm on just about every platform there is for podcasts. What about the website, the URL for that, or the name of the web page?
The web page is called iowastormhelp.com. And on there, you can find, if you're in the area, you can locate any kind of shelters, food. If you need a contractor, we've got contractors listed. If you need mental health help, which is definitely a thing that you need to consider when taking into consideration these big crises. The page is all set up so that if you ever need anything, you can just go there, search, and it will show you a pinpoint on a map exactly where you need to go.
Perfect. And good on you for doing what you do and what you can do. And I mean, folks, if you can help out, please do, because this ain't over, and it's not a minor deal, and it's going to get worse. Not only the aftermath of this particular storm, but as we talked about with Dr. Jerry Schnur, you're going to see more of these things. I'd never heard of a derecho. I looked out my living room window and saw one, but it's just like all of these occurrences, these weather catastrophes associated with the climate. Once in 100 years, they say. Well, okay, maybe once every 10 years. Okay, maybe once every 5 years. Well, okay, we'll see more derechos. We'll see more crises like this. More help is needed. Get involved. Do what you can. And again, Rachel, thanks for coming on a podcast by George.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Folks, that's going to do it. That's going to wrap it up. If you like us, please follow us at podcastbygeorge.com. Choose the platform you'd like to subscribe to, and you can follow each and every episode there. But that's going to wrap it up for today. That's all there is, and there ain't no more. That's another podcast by George.